Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 2 of football and week 3 of our fantasy football podcast. No Jordan this week. Instead, we have Chip joining us. Chip, say hello to the people.
Hey guys.
Okay.
Welcome, Chip.
This week, we're going to talk about how our teams performed week 1, how your guys' teams performed week 1, and since Chip is our first guest, we want to get kind of a look inside of Chip's process and how he tackles this fantasy football league that we are all cutting each other's throats to win.
Yeah, I just want to say that I think the podcast is a great idea. I like hearing from everybody, and I like, instead of it being in my head thinking through everything, I like hearing what everyone else is thinking. My process is pretty simple. I mean, I think I go after as many running backs as I can. As you saw, I loaded up on them on draft, and then I try and strike gold. And I really don't care about wide receivers at all. I never really have. So wide receivers and I have never had a good relationship in fantasy football. And so I load up on running backs and I try and strike gold. I have a quarterback that I can trust, and then basically tight end and defense and everything else is interchangeable. I can drop them, add them, whatever. So that's pretty much my strategy, is just get 2 solid running backs and try and have a third on hand.
That sounds similar to Anthony's strategy, which is also the reason that I don't have any running backs. Like all my running backs, I think total my running backs scored less than 10 points. Which brings me to my performance last week. I got blown out of the water. I lost 105 to 173. Rager Bombs ran away with it last week. There was no chance I could have won. But yeah.
I think is it the Rieger bombs or Rager bombs?
I think it's spelled Rager Bombs, so that's the one I'm going to go with.
I just want to do a shout out for that team, because if you look, he named his team after his very last pick in the draft, which is bold. And and his team is just on an absolute tear. I mean, watching that team, if anybody was watching it on Sunday, just sort of tallying up the points.
Oh, I was watching it on Sunday. I was well aware.
Yeah, it was just a rocket all the way to the moon. And, that team, 173, has to be close to a record for a week, I think, for us. So, that team is off to a great start, and it's going to be hard to catch them.
Truly. I think so. We all lost last week, week 1. So what are your guys' excuses, I guess?
Maybe none of us should be on this podcast.
Yeah, it's the losers podcast.
I was going up against No Pants since March, and he had a nice showing. He was led by his wide receivers. So DeAndre Hopkins came in with 29 points on the, I would say, the performance that I don't think most people expected. Most people weren't expecting DeAndre to come out that strong, at least not that early in the season. So it looks like DeAndre is not skipping a beat, and he's going to be a good wide receiver for Adam all year. Then he also followed it up with Julio with another 25 points. So a pretty solid showing with his wide receivers, and his number 3 wide receiver, Robert Woods, came in with just under 18 points. So he pretty much smacked me across the face with his wide receivers, and there was nothing I could do.
Yeah, and on my end, my week, I got absolutely torn up by busted lip, and that's Brendan, Anthony's cousin, a guy that I know, a good guy. But this particular team, it was just crazy how it worked, because I had Sammy Watkins in on Thursday night, and he tore it up, and I thought, all right, I'm off to a start, and actually Yahoo projected that I would win the game. And then Brendan's team just took off on Sunday. I mean, Juju Schuster, Russell Wilson had 31 points, which is remarkable. I mean, Yahoo had him at 21 points, so he was 10 points over. Just everything performed for him, so his team is actually really solid.
I'm showing the people his team right now and what it's looking like this week up against Mike Ditka in a box. Yeah, I think Brendan's his teams. The 3 teams that we lost against are very good teams that I think are going to do very well here later as we get more into the season. But let's look at week 2. How are you guys feeling about your week 2 matchups?
Yeah, when I heard I might be able to be on this podcast, I knew that this was going to come up, because Anthony and I are going head to head.
Yeah, I'm not feeling great. I'm not gonna lie. Half my team is out right now, so I'm sending up my fourth and fifth string wide receiver up against Chip. So I think it's safe to say it's not things aren't great in Judge Judy land.
And I'm glad for that, honestly, because I really need this win. I'm 0-1, just like you are, Anthony, and I'm looking at your team, and I'm really hoping that does pan out, where you guys have a rough week, because I kind of need to get back in the game here.
It's important for the teams that lost week 1 to come out strong here. I was looking at this, I think it was last year, and of all the teams that have gone 0-2 in our league, I want to say there was 10 or 11 of them over the past several years. One team made the playoffs.
Wow.
So that doesn't include everything from last year. I don't have any of those stats in front of me, but that's what I had found last year when we were getting to week 2. So that's pretty damning for anyone that lost last week. It's kind of, I won't say make or break, but it's about as close as it could be.
That's how I feel this week up against AJ. I feel like this is a make or break week for me. And I'm projected to win, but just barely.
Yeah. I kind of look at it like this, where there's 3 types of players for fantasy football. There's the drafters, and then they have a solid team, and they're really good at that, and they just ride that the whole season. There's the pickup crew. I would put myself in that category where I'm never very good at the draft, but if you look at what I do all season, I'm constantly remaking my team. And then there's the people who are just really, really smart about using their bench and sort of interchanging and figuring out the matchups, right? So there's those 3 types of players. And I'm not very good at that, like sort of projecting the matchup. I'm always curious.
Sorry, you cut off their Chip at the end.
I'm always curious when a player takes out a player that I thought would play and puts in someone else, and it's based on matchup, and then they crush me. So like that's not how I think. But it'll be interesting because like what Anthony was saying, if you go down 0-2 or 0-2, if you're not the type of pickup player in fantasy football and you are a drafter, it's pretty much over unless you remake your strategy.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm facing right now because my draft didn't go the way that I wanted to now, but I'm really trying to pick up the people that are kind of shining through the running back that's taking over the lead role that people didn't necessarily expect and things like that. Let's hope it works for me going forward. It's kind of my last kind of hope already, I think, is to find some diamonds in the rough because I'm seeing the scores that everybody's team put up week 1 and the scores that I'm expected to put up, and I'm just not measuring up. So I need to make some big changes deeper in my roster, especially with the running back position.
Yeah, it's important not to. It's important to react, but not to overreact.
Yeah,
right?
You don't want to clean off your whole bench and start from scratch.
That's a big thing. Is that, just because there's a player that you thought was going to do, be a solid part of your team, and they had a bad week 1, especially this year with no preseason, you really can't just dump them. You really gotta measure your response there. A few years ago, I did that. I had a wide receiver I drafted as my number 2 wide receiver, and it was Allen Robinson with Jacksonville. And 3 games in, he scored like just a handful of points, and I ended up dumping him. And by the end of the year, he'd been picked up. I think Chip might have picked him up. And by the end of the year, he was putting 15, 20 points on the board every game. So it's a thin line, right, between reacting and overreacting in fantasy football, but you really got to make sure you don't drop someone you're going to regret.
Yeah, I agree. Well, anything else you wanted to say on that particular point, Chip?
Yeah, just thinking about my strategy, and I think some other people's strategies maybe is if you're like me and you're constantly remaking your team, it has to be frustrating for those players that like to sort of stick with their players, like Anthony was talking about. Basically everything Anthony just said, it's not comfortable for me to just stick with my team when they're not doing well. So I just want to give a shout out to Lions Kool-Aiders because I think I've sent him at this point maybe 4 or 5 trades. Some of them on paper, if we were to pull it up right now, everyone would be laughing and going, "Chip, what are you thinking?" But I like to toss that out there and just get the ball rolling and see what people are thinking and try and move things right away and try and shift things around. If I can't pull it off of the waivers, then I like to send out a trade and just see where that can go.
Yeah, you do never you never know, and it's important to keep an eye on other people's benches and to keep an eye on the players that they're picking up on waiver to see what they might need. Because a lot of times I know that when one team has a particularly bad week and the player does shake things up, I see that as an opportunity to offer them something that they might want because they're in a particular market for something after they underperformed. So that's something to think about too is keeping an eye on people's performance. If somebody's won 6 games in a row, I doubt they're going to trade a single player with you. But if somebody's down in the dumps, kind of like we all are, then we're probably a lot more likely to try and switch things up a little bit. So yeah, if you're out there and you're winning, offer us some trades because you never know.
Because all these 0-1 teams are getting desperate.
Yeah, we are. The one thing I hope is that there isn't. I hope we don't have 4 teams that kick the shit out of everybody. But it looks like it's going to be competitive this upcoming week. So let's get right into that. The first game we have is between me and AJ. Really close. My predicted points 116, his predicted points 113. We kind of poked a little bit of fun at AJ. Last episode because he had because he drafted Le'Veon Bell, who is now on injured reserve. And he has George Kittle, who is just straight up out, along with Henry Ruggs, who's questionable for the game. So AJ might not even have a full roster this week when it comes to game time. We will see.
He did a good job. He picked up McKinnon this week for San Francisco. McKinnon's been out for a year and a half, almost 2 years. So it'll be interesting. McKinnon 2 years ago was a third, fourth round type of guy. So if he can live up to that, that could be a solid running back for AJ and fill in that void that Bell's going to leave for at least a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but those numbers there, 113 versus 116, that's very deceiving. I mean, I'm starting to get a sense, just like you guys were saying, without the preseason, without knowing much, that Yahoo just trying to project is just kind of a nightmare for Yahoo because that is not the way that those numbers will shake out. I mean, you might blow AJ out or he might blow you out by 40 points. And, I saw it in week 1 where it looked like I was going to win by 40 points and then it just completely underperformed. So it's just a matter of, I think, all the players and all the actual real teams getting a feel for their offense and a feel for what they're actually going to do. And in a lot of cases, if they have a committee for running backs, and then figuring out their wide receiver positions, your 1, 2, 3, 4. So every team out there right now is trying to get a feel for this without a preseason. So nobody really knows. I'll be curious to see what our actual win streaks look like maybe by week 4 even. So I think we have 2 seasons this year, sort of the preseason fantasy football, and then maybe week 5 and on is the actual season.
Yeah, it's been important for me as somebody who's new to fantasy football and new to trying to project what players are going to do better than others in my head. Learning to not always trust what is predicted from Yahoo is probably the biggest lesson you can learn. Like looking at, instead of what a running back is predicted to put up that week, looking at what teams running backs are facing and what kind of defenses they're going up against is a lot more relevant to how they're going to perform than the predicted number that Yahoo gives. I found in my own personal experience, like I would rather put up a running back who gets less touches or who gets a little bit less touches if the team they're playing against has a terrible run defense.
Yeah, and see, that's the strategy that I'm not comfortable with, but a lot of players are really good at that, sort of projecting what kind of matchup is going to be good for them and taking advantage of that. So it's just about how you play it.
Yeah. Okay, we got Judge Judy against we got you two this week. What are you guys feeling? Is there any confidence from either side, or are you guys both patiently reserved for how this week pans out?
Go ahead, Chip.
All right, so when I'm looking at this, I mean, Anthony obviously has some holes that he's got to try and fill, but I mean, it's not a good feeling even to look this season when right now I'm projected to win by 30 points, but that really means nothing this season. I've really come to learn. Last year and the year before, I don't know about anyone else's teams, but it was pretty accurate. So if it said I was going to score 130 points, I pretty much did. And this season, I get the feeling that it's not going to be like that at all. So honestly, I don't really know what to make of it, and I'm not willing to sort of put this week aside and say that I'm already winning.
Yeah, Anthony, I see you have an opening here. What's going on there, huh?
Yeah, I'll be tossing. In fact,
he's going to toss Judge Judy in there.
Yeah, Judge Judy's coming in from the bench. It just happened.
Okay. Well, you've already got. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I think we touched on it last week. I try to draft depth for wide receiver and running back specifically for injuries, and week 1 is a perfect example of why I do it. I'm lost A.J. Brown, Michael Thomas, my tight end, which that was expected, or that happened. And James Conner miraculously might be playing now. I thought he was out, but apparently he's doing okay too. So I might be plugging him back into my lineup. We'll see. So that depth really helps when you have issues like this. Of course, you're not going to replace a Michael Thomas. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
But hopefully we can get some backups that can do some work. Thursday night I had quite a few players playing, and I just picked wrong between A.J. Green and Tyler Boyd.
It happens. And there's not much you can do about it when it does happen.
No, but I had a good showing from Kareem Hunt. He put up 24 points, so I was pretty happy with that. So we'll just see. I need my team to overachieve for sure tomorrow, and maybe I'll have a chance.
Yeah, but in your defense, I don't know anyone who would have chose Tyler Boyd over AJ Green, right? So that's kind of a tough one.
Yeah, that would have. Yeah. That's an impossible call to make.
So,
do you guys want to go to the next game?
Yeah, let's move on to the next.
The first two. Yep.
So we got No Pants since March versus Lions Kool-Aiders. Now these are two teams that are coming off. Lions Kool-Aiders lost. Sorry, I'm incorrect. But No Pants since March put up big points last week, and they're expected to put up big points this week. And it looks like they're going to. Chubb
had a good. Go ahead.
Chubb had a pretty good game the other day, and it looks like he's off to a really good start. I think there's an obvious pick 'em there with No Pants since March taking it, which puts Lions Kool-Aiders in a bad position. Like we said, he very probably could be 0-2 going into the start of the season.
Yeah, I gotta say, I really like Lions Kool-Aiders, the way that he drafts. It's got to be fun because he gets to see the Lions and root for his team. And
yeah.
Clearly he likes drafting those players. But not only does he draft some Lions, he actually drafted a decent team. And look at what he did. He put in everybody who's going to really perform this week really well. A lot of the Lions are on the bench, and he still has a great team. So it's interesting watching his strategy too.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, he's another team that was hit by the injury bug there pretty early. Between Crowder and Galladay being out, he's had this, kind of pull from his depth. Corey Davis could be one. He's projected for 13 points. He had a really good week 1 out of nowhere, and without A.J. Brown, Corey Davis could have a nice week again. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes.
I want to point out No Pants since March that they've won 388 fantasy football games and lost 274 fantasy football games. That is an insane amount of fantasy football games.
It is.
I did not realize the disparity in experience between some people in this league.
This is Adam's team, and Anthony and I know Adam well, and this guy lives and breathes sort of thinking through all this stuff, and I know for a fact that, when you look at his team, it's well thought out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, his drafts are always well thought out. He's always going to be making the move and trying to think about how is he going to win. He's a competitor, for sure.
Yep. Let's move on to the next game. Marine City Cubbies versus Rager Bombs. Another big teams coming off big wins last week. Rager Bombs is going to be my favorite here. Based on what they did last week, it's going to be hard. There's no reason for them to perform worse. It seems like a pretty fair matchup that most of his players have. And I've noticed this looking at some players on our league, if you're watching the video right now. Teams, and including myself, have started looking at the... there's this little notification right under players' names that tells you a little bit about the matchup. So it'll tell you, like, for example, Atlanta has given up the 6th most fantasy points to wide receivers. And that is a feature that I didn't know existed, and now that I do know it exists, it is one of the most important things that I prioritize when looking at my lineup.
You're not supposed to find out about these secrets.
Secrets, like this is like we were talking about the experience thing. If I would have known that was there, I feel like I would have used it more. But yeah,
I
let's
think we need-
let's talk about that
Go ahead.
matchup a little bit more.
I just want to talk a little bit about Rager Bombs or Rieger Bombs. This is Ben's team, I think, right? So
Yep.
this is Anthony's brother Ben, and when you look at his team lineup on paper, just look at it for a second. It just does not, at least to me, and this isn't a slam on his team, but it doesn't scream to me a powerhouse.
Mm-mm.
And he took a chance on Roethlisberger, in my opinion. And he's got McCaffrey, which is great. But a lot of these guys, it's all about like whether or not they have a good season. Like Ridley and Gallup, Jacobs. Like none of these guys are like absolute slam dunks, and he is just rolling people with these players. And so big shout out to him. Like if he keeps this up, it's going to be ridiculous to try and catch him. Right now, he's only slated to get 134 points, but I don't think he was slated to get 170 last week. And look at what he put up.
No, he was not. Let's not count Cubbies out too early. It's this. I think this game is going to be one of the closest games this week between these two teams.
Marine City Cubbies has a solid team. I like so he picked up Naheem Hines last week just before the game started. Who is going to see a much larger workload now that running back for Indy.
Mm-hmm.
Marlon Mack. Marlon Mack is out for the season. So you've got
wow.
Yeah. So Naheem Hines will be picking up a much larger workload than he was projected to have. There's still Jonathan Taylor there. But if it's anything like last week, both those players are going to get work throughout the game.
Yeah, we got two big hitters in this matchup.
Yeah, so Marine City Cubbies, they're the ones on paper that if, it were draft night or before the season, you would definitely be starring them going, they've got this, looking at this matchup here. So, like you said, they could catch fire too. Like, on paper, it looks solid. So it's all about them just performing. But good for Rieger Bombs because, like, just looking at the order he's got in the draft strategy, it's an interesting strategy, and he's just nailing it. You got to give it to him.
Yep. Okay, busted lip, dick in a box. Two winning teams. Dick in a box doesn't look like he has adjusted his lineup quite yet. He's still got Godwin on there, who's out this week.
Yeah, but knowing Jorge, he will for sure. Like, this is a guy who when was he in finals? It wasn't long ago, right?
He won.
He won
3 years.
He
Yeah.
3
won?
years ago.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then he was right there knocking on the door. I know. Was it last year or 2 years ago? I'm trying to
I
remember.
think 2 years ago. I think he
years
might have
ago.
lost to you 2 years ago.
That's what it was. Yep. So there is no way that he's not going to swap that out. He'll do that, and
Yeah.
he's going to be competitive all season.
Got the Chicago defense repping the hometown kid. Yeah, this is going to be a close game too. I'll take Brendan though. I think I don't have any reason behind it. You know what? I'm tired of justifying myself. I have no reason. I'm just picking Brendan. Coin flip. That's who I think's going to win.
No, it should be a pretty competitive game. I'm assuming he's going to probably throw Diggs in, maybe Devontae Parker, but I'm guessing he's going to throw Diggs in, and that'll put his projected score right up there with Brendan. It'll be close, within 5 or 6 points. So this looks to be a pretty evenly matched game. Brendan's team is solid. His running backs are very. They're either going to hit or they're going to go down in flames. Both of them are pretty heavily injury prone. So as long as they stay healthy, he's got a great set of running backs. But if the injury bug starts biting, that could be trouble.
Yeah, and just having dealt with him last week where he just busted my lip, I know that he's got a solid team, and he's got it set up where if you, just like you said, you've got Delvin Cook and Gurley, and if they don't have great games, which they're prone to do every now and then, right? They don't have a great game. He's got solid wide receivers and solid players around him to make up the difference, and it's going to be tough. Now, the only thing, like you said, if an injury here or there hits, it's going to be real tricky.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to this last game. We've got the juice is loose in the refrigerator. The refrigerator already has 17 points on the board, rather, coming in. Nick, looks like, is Nick one of these other players who's going to have like hundreds of hours? Only 45 and 33, so not as much experience. These are the kind of games that Jordan wins. Like he's down early, the other team already has points up, but Jordan is one of the luckiest human beings I've ever met, and these are his bread and butter.
He's going to need a better game from Evans this week, which is possible with the other wide receiver out. Last week, Mike Evans was not targeted much by Brady, so we'll have to see how that develops.
It is raining, so they might stay on the ground.
Just looking at the teams, like Nick's team, which is the refrigerator, like you were saying, when you look at that team, on paper it looks good, but it's also a hit or miss. It's a famine or a bust, right? Or, and it's explosion or a famine. And you've got those particular players like Ertz that can go. I had him last year. 1 week he can have 6 points, the next week he can have 25. And Kamara, same thing. Beckham Jr., same thing. And if they all hit, it's going to be real hard to beat them. But if they have 2 or 3 weeks in a row where they're just not on fire altogether collectively, then it's going to be really tricky. And like you said, I would not at all be looking at this projection and thinking that Jordan's out of it. Like if you look at his team on paper, like you said, he is the luckiest player in this league right now. Having drafted Jackson in the 17th round, 16th round.
Yep.
And been able to keep him as a keeper. So it's ridiculous what he was able to sort of be gifted by the draft, and now he's just filling in the holes perfectly, it looks like. So that's going to be a really rough team down the stretch too.
Yeah, I fully expect Matt Prater to kick 15 points through the uprights against Green Bay this week too. I'm just a Matt Prater fanboy. Nothing more about it.
Yeah, when you look at his team, you just get the impression that it's well thought out, and you know Jordan well enough to know that he's thinking these things through, and he's going to be filling in the gaps as they come along and making sure the adjustments are made. So I am not looking forward to seeing the juices loose when I have to play them 1 week.
Yeah, more importantly, Jordan watches an insane amount of sports like media, and so his research is always on point just because he just does so much. He listens to Pat McAfee more than he doesn't listen to Pat McAfee, and so his football knowledge is usually pretty on point, being a college student with nothing more to do.
So really what you need is Nick to contact Pat McAfee and
give him
have
some
Pat
bullshit.
McAfee say that there are certain players that are not going to be in that week to get him to switch it.
If I was Nick, that is what my strategy would be this week. Okay. Do we want to name a 5-head and a knucklehead of this week? I feel like we don't know yet until after this weekend. Maybe we'll have to skip it this week. Typically, that's something that, like a 5-head is someone who, it's like a 4-head but bigger, like you have a bigger head, like you have a big brain. That's for someone who did something really good in a week, and then the knucklehead for someone who did something stupid. I don't think there's a knucklehead and 5-head so far. I think we'll find out Monday morning, or Monday night, rather, how everything shakes out. So I don't have one unless you guys. Is there anything that you guys see in somebody's lineups that you don't mind warning them about, that you want to poke fun at?
I haven't seen any. Honestly, we just looked at them all. I don't see anything that just strikes me as a big red flag that somebody's making a big mistake.
Mm-hmm. I agree. But hindsight's 20/20. If one of these players sits, I have no problem shitting on AJ.
I would never have started Hooper. That was a terrible start.
Talking about me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
There is somebody on my bench that I considered. Cook had it's another occasion where I don't know how he's going to perform yet, but LA is a more advantageous start than Hooper's was. So
well, the other thing with Cook is that with Michael Thomas out this week, generally Thomas has quite a few targets. He didn't last week, but typically there's a lot of targets that will have to get spread around, and Cook could see an increased usage because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something to keep in mind moving forward, because I'm assuming Michael Thomas will be out for a few weeks. But
hopefully that'll be reflected in my lineup next week, and I'll be more prepared. I really do.
Yeah, We're not handing this stuff out for free, Jeremy. So
Okay. One place I do need to improve is looking at lineups and seeing where running or like where targets are being spread. That's part of the research process that I need to improve on.
I think, though, looking at your team, just building towns, when you look at it and you put in Rodgers this week, you played Tom Brady last week. Aaron Rodgers is obviously playing Detroit this week.
That's why I put Aaron Rodgers in.
Anybody who's playing Detroit should just play all their players against Detroit. I mean,
Truly.
You're going to put up numbers. You're just going to. And Aaron Rodgers is going to have great numbers, even over Tom Brady. But I guess my question to you, Jeremy, is let's say week 2 goes down in a bust again. What kind of changes or what are you thinking of doing?
I'm thinking of getting... I think the weakest part of my team right now is the running back position. And it's hard to get better running backs when there's a lot of people in this league who prioritize that position very highly. And so my course of action, if this week busts, is to try and sacrifice some of the weapons that I have in other positions to get better running back weapons.
Yeah, I think more than any other year, we're going to see a flurry of drops and adds more than any other year. And potentially a few more trades. I mean, our league isn't really big on trades. We don't do a whole lot of trading, but I can imagine this year we might break the record.
Yeah, I think that's something that's going to change fairly soon when there are some have and have-nots, some teams that get very streaky, and some other teams that need huge structural changes like I fear mine will need. So time will tell. We don't know yet. Anything else you guys wanted to touch on?
that's pretty much all I had for tonight.
Yeah, me as well. Thank you guys for listening. I want to find a regular day to record and upload these. It's kind of hard right now, obviously, but I do want to get more guests on in the future. So if you're interested in being on, unfortunately we couldn't get AJ this week. Schedules didn't line up. But if you are interested in being on, let me know just in the comments of wherever I post this. Thank you for listening. If you've made it all the way through, anything else from you guys?
Yeah, just thanks for the podcast. I really enjoyed listening to the first one, and I'm glad to be a part of this one. And I think it'd be cool if everybody who's in the league at one point is on it, and we could hear from everybody. Because I don't know everybody. I know most of them, but I don't know everyone. And it'd just be cool to hear their perspective, hear what they're thinking, how they run their team. I think it's a great idea.
I agree, yeah.
Thanks for coming on tonight, Chip, with such
Absolutely.
short notice. We appreciate it.
No problem.
See you guys later.
All right,
See
have a
ya.
good night.